Hello guys, today I'm gonna be showing you the test that I did with the new Sony FE 12-24mm f4 right here on this site. I had a chance to also compare it to my Tamron 15-32.8 and the Canon 11-24mm f4. So I just wanted to share the results of my test, so if you're considering these lenses, you might be able to make a decision on which one to purchase. So let's go ahead and start with a test I did at 15mm. This was comparing the Sony and the Tamron. At the time I was just waiting for the rental place to open and give me my Canon for the test. So first test, we're gonna check the Canon and the Sony at 15mm and f4, which is the maximum aperture for the Sony. So let's gonna show you how they compare. The Sony is a coordinated lens. The Tamron I'm using with the Metabones 5 and firmware 57. So right here is what I was trying to focus, and as you can see, detail wise it's a bit hard to tell because the conditions change a little bit and the color on the lens is different, and I didn't want to tamper with editing and changing anything, so I just wanted to show photos directly from the camera. I do realize that because Tamron doesn't have a profile on the camera, that means that none of the CA is going to be corrected, so it has a disadvantage there. But the Tamron also shows the truck and the Sony doesn't. Yeah, anyways, we can at least focus on this before the truck parked there. As you can see, the Tamron is blurry, and you can see all the CA. As I said, it's not corrected. The Sony is a lot sharper, and you can see it's very sharp even to the edges. And this is wide open. You can even see the 339 number there. And also remember that all the photos that I'm showing here, I'm going to have a link on the description so you can download them, blow them up to 100, and check them all and have fun figuring out which one you like more. So again, here we see on the other side somebody on the floor there. It's very common in Salt Lake City, sadly. So you see classic cars here. It seems a bit more detail on the Sony, even though it's a bit wider. It seems that the Tamron is not quite 15mm. And on the edges here, still you can see that the Sony has the advantage at f4. So let's check them at f8 and see what we find out. So we got the Sony, the Tamron, and then we got the the Sony at f8. It's gonna check the center sharpness. The Sony seems to be a lot better. Also remember that all these photos that I'm showing here is just, of course, one sample of at least 4 photos that I took per lens, per aperture. So I just show one, and normally if I see any variances in focus, I'll let you know, just in case, so you know that the lens is not focusing correctly with the adapter or whatever. See, edge place looks sharper to me on the Sony, or it could be the CA. The supplies also looks sharper on the Sony to me. Maybe the CA making me see it sharper with the Sony. Not sure. You will have your own evaluation when you download the photos and try yourself. One thing I noticed is that this Sony seems to be very sharp in the center and the left, but on the right edge it seems to be weak. So I wish I had a better copy, but it's the one that I got from Lens Rental. Nothing I could do about it. It's the only one that I could find. But I'm interested in getting a new copy and comparing, because if I can find one as sharp on the center and left as this one is, but then fixing the right side, I'll be very happy with this lens. I haven't bought it yet, but I'm seriously considering it. Now I tried this one 24mm test. With all the testing that I was doing, I totally forgot about any other ranges except the widest. So I apologize for that. This is the Tamron 24mm f4. This is the Sony 24mm f4. Clearly the Sony seems to be sharper here to me. Its place, Seems like the Tamron is actually a bit better here. And let's see this white fence there. Since the Tamron against is sharper, I can see like a bit more detail on that chain there, which is interesting. Same with the brick. What on this side? Classic car sign. And this side seems to be like the sun is a bit better. I think my Tamron is a bit weak on the left side. All focal ranges. Or is it an adapter? I don't know. I never tried it on a native camera. It's a Canon lens. Okay, so let's move on to probably what you guys want to see more, which is the Canon 11mm versus the Sony. So let's go here, and we'll show F4 first. This is the Canon and the Sony. I did the Canon 11 because the difference is not that huge, and I just wanted to show you what it can do at its widest versus the Sony at its widest. So I'm sure you're not going to buy the Canon to use it at 12mm. So here we go. If I click on the right place. Okay, so center sharpness, Canon, Sony, Canon, Sony. Seems to me that the Sony has a bit more detail. Let's see, its place here. Could be like the Sony has a bit more detail, or it's just a bit closer and it helps. Let's see this best way on the truck here. Clearly you can see that the Sony is sharper, and also the CA is pretty much nothing, but again, there's no profile in the camera, so who knows how much is being corrected by the profile inside the Sony. All I can say is that it looks really sharp all the way to the edge, which it's pretty impressive. And just showing some of the foreground stuff. Let's see here the classic cars. It's hard to tell, it's a far away sign, but it seems to me like the Sony is definitely sharper in all this area. And all the way to antique leather here, but then look what happens in the car. Look at the classic car sign on the car. That's the Sony, and that's the Canon. There's a huge difference there. For some reason this lens seems to be centered, and that right side, it's very bad, and it happened in all the tests. As I said, I take multiple shots per aperture, so this wasn't a random accident that happened. Let's check it out. F8. Okay, let's go full size, center sharpness, Canon, Sony, Canon, Sony, its place. Not much of a difference. The truck here, definitely the Sony easily sharper, and the same goes for the janitorial supplies sign on the back. You can even see here where it says please. It's very easy to read on the Sony. I mean, you can still read it on the Canon, but the Sony is just so good. And all the way to the top here, I mean, it's no contest on that side, and most of this side too. Let's see if the car got any better now compared to the other. So it looks like the car looks a lot better now. Stop down. Still, I'm hoping to find a really good copy wide open, and I'm going to check here. As soon as I get one, I'm going to come down here to take some sample photos of it. But as you can see, I mean, it's pretty impressive how all the brick here, all the detail is kept on the Sony now. When you consider the size difference between the lenses, and it's pretty impressive to me what Sony was able to do with this lens. So now let's go move on to a different test that I did the same day. I was between shoots, I was trying to get things done and trying to do the test, so pardon me for mistakes. This is not meant to be the be all and all test. Normally the lens rental does that type of test, but I think it gives a good idea what to expect with the lenses. So here I'm going to show you the Sony and the Canon at their widest, 11 and 12 millimeter and f4 aperture. So this is Capitol Hill in Utah, Salt Lake City. So we got the Canon here, the Sony, and the focus area was right here where it says state of Utah. So Canon, Sony. I think I can see a lot more detail. Well, say a lot, but visibly more detail. Like you can see here the detail on the Sony versus the Canon. I mean, I think it's pretty easy to tell the difference between the two. We can see these corners here. This is Sony, this is the Canon. If you can see all the way to these lights here, the lamps. Again, Canon, Sony, Canon, Sony. And once again, you'll be able to get all these files to play with them. Canon, Sony, Canon, Sony. And I think this is a plain clear victory for the Sony on this one. Let's check the same F8. So I'm just showing F8 and F4, although I did test at 5.6 and at 11 as well, but the video will take forever if I keep doing this. So the same, got the Sony and the Canon. Sony, let's check the detail up here. Canon, Sony, all the way to the top, all the way to the edge here. Let's see how the lamps look. Canon, Sony, Canon, Sony. So you can see here the detail remains better on the Sony. I'm sorry. Not to say that the Canon is a bad lens, and if you correct the CA and certain sharpening, I'm sure it looks great, but it's pretty obvious that the Sony is delivering better image quality right now. Again, this is on a Sony body. I haven't tried this on a Canon camera. I'm not sure how much of an effect using an adapter has on edge quality. So I'm not saying that the Sony is a better lens than the Canon, but this is on a Sony body. These are the results. So far, the Sony seems to have the upper hand. So let's see the next test that I did. I went up to the mountains towards a cave in Timpanogos Cave in American Fork in Utah. After a nice hike, it was pretty hot. Did some tests up there. I've tried to find some place where there was no trees blocking me so I could have a clearer view of the mountain. This is the best that I could find. So Canon, Tamron, and Sony all at 15 and F4. Okay, so I'm gonna start here with Canon, and the focus area of all these photos, if you download them, is this center rock here. So if you go small, it's always gonna be the center. So this is where I was focusing, using center focus all the time, or spot focus. So just for your information, where you're comparing. So this is the Canon, this is the Sony, and this is the Tamron. So between the Tamron and the Canon, they look pretty similar in the center. The Sony seems to have more detail, but also the lighting changed, so I'm not sure if the contrast is fooling me. So this, take a look at this rock here on the Canon. The Sony clearly more defined, and the Tamron seems to be similar to the Canon maybe. Let's see the detail on this rock. Canon, it's pretty blurry. Sony a lot more detail, and the Tamron seems blurrier than the Canon. And how about this over here? Canon, Sony, definitely more detail. Tamron, Canon. Do remember that the Tamron is actually a 2.8 lens, so it's top down, so it will have an advantage in that it's not at its maximum aperture, but still having a problem keeping up with the Sony, even with that advantage. Now let's take a look at this wall here. This is the Canon, the Sony, and the Tamron. And how about this texture here, this wall? Canon, Sony, and Tamron. Not that different. Now this is the weakest part for me on the Sony, and it's this right side. So let's take a look. This is the Canon. Maybe you can find some good spot to take a look at. This is the Sony. And it's not looking so bad right now as I thought, but you can still see how this is more defined, better detail here than when I switched to the Sony. It's all blurry. Up here as well, you can see how on this top, it's not like the Canon is razor sharp, but look at the Sony. It's softer, and the Tamron is actually a bit sharper, maybe. Or maybe just my imagination. You tell me, guys. You can make the comment and let me know what you see, especially when you download them and check them yourselves. Let's take a look at F8 and see if the Sony gets a lot better on the right side like I did with the car. So once again, center sharpness in this rock, Canon, Sony, Tamron. Let's go directly to that weak spot. So we got the Tamron here, Sony looking better, and now the Canon. So it looks like the Sony, when you stop it down, is able to compensate for whatever the centering it has and actually match or beat the Canon. At least to my eyes, that's what's happening. If you guys see it differently, please comment and tell me what you find out when you test the images yourself. And let's see on this side, that's the same road as before. It's Tamron, Sony, Canon, which actually seems to be sharper now on this side. Interesting. Let's see all the way here to the edge. There's the Canon, the Sony, and the Tamron. Now the texture here on this wall. Tamron, Sony, definitely better. In Canon, and sadly the light changed so much that it's hard to judge, but if you figure out what you think is best, let me know. So now let's move on to the big boys at 12 and 11 instead. So we're gonna check the Canon F4 and the Sony at F4. The maximum, the widest focal range 11 and 12. So we got the, again, center focus here. So Canon, Sony, Canon, Sony. It'd be hard to tell, but I will say that I think the Sony is actually sharper. Let's take a look here. You can probably see, if you see what I'm seeing, I see more detail when I switch to the Sony. Again, the light keeps changing, so it can be deceiving me. Right here at the top, Canon, Sony, Canon, Sony, and to me the Sony has the upper hand up there, and there's a texture here, this rug on the edge. Canon, of course the Canon is wider so it shows more. Sony, but the Sony seems to have more detail to me. And how about some of the trees down here? Let's see this somewhere around here. Canon, Sony, you can see more texture in this area, for example. Canon, Sony, and let's move around here like we did earlier. Canon and Sony. That thing's sharper. And now let's go to the bad side. So already you can see how this is very sharp in the Sony, and in Sony it's a big drop in sharpness around here. You don't see the same with the Canon, or at least not as intense. Of course, yeah, it's sharper and then it starts losing sharpness. But I feel like the Sony just, it's very drastic drop. Like it goes from beating the Canon in most areas, like here you can see how much sharper it gets, and then suddenly on that side it just totally loses to the Canon. It's very blurry. Let's see if F8 is able to recover and beat the Canon. So here we go. Again, center sharpness right here. Canon, Sony, and let's go to the right side directly. So this is the right side on the Sony. This is the Canon. Sony, Canon. So now to me it's pretty close between the two. So the advantage that the Canon had it's gone after we stop down, but it still bothers me to know that the lens could have been better, and I just wasn't very lucky with my copy. Right here again, checking sharpness. Again, could be the light, but to my eyes, Sony looks sharper. And this side one more time. Canon, Sony, Canon, and Sony. So this will be the test of F8 at the mountain on Timpanogos, on the way to Timpanogos cave. I didn't make it all the way to the cave. So I can show you here how they compare in size. As you can see, the Sony is definitely the smallest of them all. The Canon is also chubbier. The Tamron is still the biggest, but all of them will require some special filter in order to use. I did the Tamron to Yellowstone recently with a filter, and it did really good. But now that I see how nice the 1224 is in the edges, I wish I had it for that time, but it wasn't available at the time, so I couldn't take it with me. So guys, I hope this video has been helpful. You'll be seeing some images that I took during my walk inside Capitol Hill, and some when coming down from Timpanogos cave. I'm gonna, as I said, on the description you'll have a link to download all the files that I used. You'll be able to test. There's gonna be the raw files as well, so you can convert them and fix to your hard content. Hopefully this will be useful for you to decide which lens you want if you have been considering one of these lenses. And let me know what else you want to see. I'm planning to do a 35mm shootout. Also, I'm planning to get the Tamron 70-200 2.8 and be able to compare it to the GM. So I have a lot of things and ideas, but you guys are the ones that are more interested in different gear. You can tell me what you want, and I'll do my best to find the gear and compare it and review it for you. So hit me up, send me a message, and let me know what you want to see in the channel. Have a good one.